Let me tell you something about power. Not the kind that comes from yelling, blocking, or begging, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth. You see, in life, people will test you. They will ghost you. They'll stop texting, stop calling. Leave your messages on read like you're invisible. And your first instinct, you want to call them up. You want to beg. You want to ask what went wrong. You want to block them to feel like you did something. But I'm telling you right now, don't block him. Don't beg. Just do this. Be silent. Be still. Watch what happens. You know why? Because silence is loud. Silence is a power move. Silence is how royalty responds. When a man knows he hurt you and he gets no reaction, that silence gets in his head louder than any angry text ever could. When you block him, he knows you're mad. When you beg, he knows he's got power. But when you say nothing, absolutely nothing, you snatch back your dignity. You show him you don't need him to validate your worth. You show him you're the prize. Now let's get something straight. I'm not talking about playing games. I'm talking about standing up for your heart. I'm talking about emotional discipline. Because see, when you stop reacting, you start reflecting. You realize, wait a minute, why am I chasing someone who wouldn't even jog for me? And that silence you gave him, that's the beginning of your healing. That's the moment your soul breathes again. You know what happens when you don't block him. He still has access to see you rise. He sees that glow up. He sees your progress, your peace, your strength. He sees you laughing, thriving, looking good. And he knows he ain't part of it. That's the real payback. That's not petty, that's purpose. Because when someone thought you would crumble without them and you choose to elevate instead, that's the win. And when you don't beg, now you're teaching him a lesson he won't forget. You're teaching him that you don't audition for love. You're not standing outside a locked door crying to get in. You're walking away with grace. You're walking away with your head held high. And guess what? The right people, the ones who truly care, you'll never have to beg them. They'll be consistent. They'll be clear. They'll communicate. Now I know it hurts. I know you want closure. I know you want answers. But sometimes peace is your answer and silence is your closure. So don't let that man take up space in your heart that was meant for someone who sees you, chooses you, and respects you. Don't block him. Don't beg. Just get quiet. Focus on you. Start doing you like you forgot who you were for a second. Get back to your goals. Get back to your peace. Start moving like you know you deserve more, because you do. You absolutely do. So the next time he ghosts you, disrespects you, makes you feel small, don't block. Oh, don't beg, just smile, be still, and let your silence speak. He'll hear it, and he'll feel it. And by then, you'll be too far ahead to look back. And that right there is when everything changes. Don't let temporary emotions lead to permanent decisions. That right there is the game changer. That's the wisdom most people don't realize until it's too late. See, emotions are real and they're powerful. Hurt, anger, rejection, disappointment, those feelings hit you like a wave. They make your chest tight, your hands shaky, your thoughts spiral. And in those moments, you want to do something. You want to say something. You want to react. You want to fix it, or maybe destroy it. But if you move too fast, if you make decisions based on those fleeting emotions, you could end up burning bridges you'll wish you had walked across later. When he stops calling, when the communication dies down, when you start to feel ignored or replaced, your feelings go into overdrive. That insecurity creeps in. You start thinking you weren't enough. You start wondering what you did wrong. And in that emotional storm, you might want to send that long paragraph, make that dramatic phone call, or hit that block button like it's your salvation. But all that's temporary thinking. That's pain talking, not power. And pain doesn't make wise decisions. It makes loud ones. Let me tell you something. If you let your emotions drive, they'll run you off a cliff. Because the truth is, most of what you're feeling in that moment, it won't even matter in a week. You'll wake up a few days later with a clear head, realizing you could have held your peace. You could have stayed in control. You could have handled it like the royalty you are. But now you're stuck with regrets and screenshots of things you wish you hadn't said. The people who master life, relationship success, they all have one thing in common. They respond, they don't react. They learn to sit with their emotions, process them, and then Move with purpose, not pain. And listen, it's okay to feel. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to cry. But it's not okay to let that emotion trick you into making a decision that damages your dignity. It's not okay to let one bad day ruin a good future. Sometimes the silence you give is not about being passive. It's about being wise. It's about letting the fire inside cool down so you can see clearly. Because when your head is clear, when your heart settles, you might realize that what felt like rejection was actually redirection. You might realize you don't even want him back. You might realize you deserve way more than a one-word reply and excuses. You see, permanent decisions carry weight. Blocking him might feel empowering in the moment, but it could close the door to a necessary conversation. Begging might feel like fighting for love, but it could leave your self-worth in pieces. Walking away quietly and confidently, that's strength. That's patience, that's growth. So don't let that late night emotion push you to send that message you can't take back. Don't let that moment of loneliness make you reach out to someone who made you feel invisible. Don't let that fear of being alone make you settle for being tolerated instead of being loved. You're not crazy for feeling. You're human. But be wise enough to know that feelings come and go. Make your decisions based on your values, not your mood. And always remember, the strength is not in the reaction, it's in the restraint. Because the person who can stay calm in chaos, the one who can breathe through the storm, is the one who wins every time. Blocking isn't always closure. It's often a cry for attention. Now, that one stings a little because most people don't want to admit it. We tell ourselves, I blocked him because I'm done, or I blocked him for my peace, and sometimes that's true. But if we're being honest, real honest, a lot of the time, we're not blocking them out of strength. We're doing it because we want to be noticed. We want to be missed. We want that notification that says, why did you block me? Or that text from a new number saying, let's talk. It's less about moving on and more about hoping they realize what they lost. The truth is, closure doesn't come from screens. It doesn't come from clicks. Closure isn't pressing a button and expecting healing. Closure comes from understanding. It comes from acceptance. It comes from choosing to let go, even when you don't get the apology, even when you don't get the explanation. Blocking can be helpful in toxic situations. Absolutely. If someone is abusive, manipulative, or damaging to your mental health, then yes, you block and you protect your peace. But too often, people block out of frustration, not strategy, out of emotion, not wisdom. Let's be real. A lot of folks block because they don't want to sit with the silence. They think, if I block him, I don't have to deal with the fact that he's not reaching out. But here's the thing. Blocking someone doesn't mean you've moved on. Sometimes it just means you're still controlled by what they didn't do. You're trying to get a reaction. And when you do something hoping for a reaction, you're still not free. Think about it. If you truly didn't care, you wouldn't need to block. You'd be indifferent. You'd be unbothered. You'd move through your life without needing to take digital scissors to their presence. But blocking becomes a badge of control when really it's a mask for pain. It's like saying, look at me letting go when inside, you're still hoping they care enough to fight for you. Now again, I'm not saying you need to keep people in your space who don't deserve to be there. Boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are necessary. But there's a difference between boundaries and bitterness. There's a difference between healing and hoping they notice you're absent. And that's what a lot of blocking is about. It's not healing, it's performance. You know what takes more strength than blocking? Being okay with not being chosen and still choosing yourself. Letting them stay on your timeline and not feeling anything. Seeing their name and not needing to react. That's strength, that's growth. That's when you know you've really let go. Because peace doesn't need to announce itself, it just is. Blocking might make you feel powerful for a moment, but silent self-control and walking away with your head high. That's the real power. That's when you flip the script. That's when you shift the energy back to you. You're not begging, you're not lashing out. You're not trying to control the narrative, you're just done. Quietly, peacefully, and permanently. So before you hit that block button, ask yourself, is this for my peace or my pride? Because one leads to freedom, and the other keeps you stuck in a cycle you were born to break. And sometimes the strongest move is not to block him, it's to outgrow him. Begging won't bring respect. It only lowers your value in their eyes. See, here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The moment you start pleading for someone to love you, choose you, stay with you, or even text you back, you've already handed over your power. You've already told them that your worth is tied to their validation. And once you do that, the balance in that relationship is no longer equal. It shifts. You start chasing, they start running. You start explaining, they start ignoring. And worst of all, you start shrinking just to keep their attention. Let's be real. If someone wants to leave, begging them to stay doesn't change their heart. It only changes how they see you. What used to be admiration turns into pity. What used to be respect becomes annoyance. That's the cost of begging. It makes you look like you don't know your worth. It puts you in a position where you're trying to convince someone of your value, when that's something they should have recognized the moment they met you. Love, real love, is never something you have to beg for. Respect, real respect, is never something you have to demand on your knees. If they don't see your value when you're standing tall, they'll never truly value you when you're on your knees. And listen, I get it. The heart wants what it wants. You had history. You had plans. You believed in what could have been. But begging won't bring back the version of them you fell for. If they're not showing up for you, if they're not choosing you, you have to choose yourself. Because the moment you start begging, you start compromising. You start making excuses for behavior you know isn't right. You start settling for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole table. You start calling it love when really, it's just fear of being alone. That's not love. That's survival. And you were not made to survive love. You were made to thrive in it. Here's the hard truth. People don't change because you begged them to. People change when they're ready. And if they're not ready to show up for you, no amount of begging will fix that. All it does is show them they can mistreat you and still have access to you. That they can ignore you and you'll still be there. That they can disappear and you'll be the one to apologize. And that's not how love works. That's not how self-respect works. You have to get to a point where silence is louder than your words, where your absence teaches them what your presence couldn't, where you stop trying to prove your worth and start living it. Because once you stop begging, you start rising. You start walking differently. You start making decisions from a place of strength, not desperation. And that's when everything changes. You become the version of yourself that doesn't chase but attracts. The version that doesn't need to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And when someone sees you standing in that kind of confidence, they'll either step up or step aside. But either way, you win. So if you ever find yourself on the verge of sending that message, making that call, or begging for their attention, pause, breathe. Remember who you are, because anyone who truly deserves a place in your life won't need convincing to stay. Sometimes silence is your loudest response. That's the truth people overlook, because silence doesn't give instant gratification. It doesn't give you that rush like sending a dramatic message, or the temporary relief of venting your emotions. Silence doesn't scream. It doesn't plead. It doesn't demand. It just is. But within that stillness, there's power, there's strength. There's clarity, and more than anything, there's dignity. Silence is how you reclaim your power without ever having to raise your voice. When someone hurts you, ignores you, disrespects you, or walks away without explanation, the natural reaction is to want to respond. You want closure. You want them to understand the pain they caused. You want to make sure they know they were wrong. But here's the problem. That need to respond is often more about your ego than your healing. It's about trying to win a battle that was never worth fighting. Silence, on the other hand, is what you choose when you're done performing, when you're no longer interested in proving anything, when peace matters more than being right. Silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. It's knowing you could go off, you could write a paragraph, you could block, unfriend, confront, or lash out, but you choose not to. That choice, that's strength. Because when you stay silent, it's not because you don't have anything to say. It's because what you have to say is too valuable to be wasted on someone who won't hear it, respect it, or deserve it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let people sit with their own actions. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them hear your silence louder than any speech you could have given. Words can be dismissed. Silence, it lingers. It makes people reflect. It makes them wonder. It makes them ask, why didn't she say anything? And that question is more powerful than any answer you could have given. Because silence shows maturity. It shows that your peace isn't up for negotiation. It shows that you don't need to engage in games to prove your worth. Here's the truth. Not everyone deserves a response. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, or your explanation. You don't have to justify your decision to walk away. You don't have to explain why you're no longer available. When someone shows you through their actions that they don't value you, you don't need to tell them, you show them. Through distance, through composure, through silence. And the best part, silence protects your power. It keeps you in control. It allows you to step back, observe, and heal without getting dragged into chaos. Because every time you engage, every time you respond in anger or hurt, you give a piece of yourself away. Silence keeps you whole. It keeps your dignity intact. It gives you space to grow, to think, and to remember who you are outside of the pain. Eventually, people notice what's no longer there. They notice the shift. They notice when your energy is missing. And by the time they come looking for a reaction, all they'll find is a stronger, wiser version of you who has no interest in revisiting the past. That's the power of silence. It doesn't chase, it replaces. And that kind of quiet speaks volumes. So when you're tempted to react, to respond, to defend yourself, pause, choose silence. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you've outgrown the need to explain. Watch what happens when you stop chasing. Watch what shifts when you pull all your energy back into yourself. People always notice when something they took for granted suddenly disappears. When your name stops popping up on their phone. When your presence, your energy, your laughter, your good morning text, it all vanishes. That silence, that silence, that absence, it hits differently. Because people don't miss you when you're constantly available. They miss you when your energy becomes scarce. That's when your value becomes undeniable. Here's what happens. You stop showing up where you're not appreciated. You stop explaining your worth to people who treated you like an option. And instead, you start doing something that changes everything. You start choosing yourself, and the second you do that, something magical happens. You stop feeling desperate. You stop feeling broken. You stop wondering what you did wrong, because you realize it was never about fixing yourself to fit into someone else's confusion. It was about stepping back and remembering who you were before you started shrinking to make others comfortable. You're not hard to love. You're not too much. You were just giving your all to someone who didn't know what to do with it. And now you're done chasing. You're done begging for love you deserve effortlessly. That shift, that silence, that confidence, it's loud without being spoken. It teaches without having to preach. And when people see that they no longer have access to you like they used to, it stings. They might not say it out loud, but trust me, they feel it. People start checking for you in subtle ways, watching your stories, asking mutual friends how you're doing, dropping random likes on old posts. It's not a coincidence, it's because you pulled back your energy and they feel the loss of it because energy doesn't lie. You were the light. You were the peace. You were the presence they thought would always be there, and now you're not. But the best part? You're not doing any of this to get a reaction. You're not pulling away as a strategy. You're not waiting to see if they come back. You're doing it because you finally realize your peace is priceless. You've stopped making excuses for someone's bare minimum. You've stopped shrinking yourself to maintain a bond that was draining you. And instead, you've started investing in your healing, your growth, your glow up. You're spending more time doing things that make you feel alive, pouring into friendships that pull back, getting focused on your goals, your health, your journey. And the more you do that, the more you realize you never needed them to complete you. You just needed to remember your wholeness. You just needed space to breathe and see clearly again. Eventually, they might come back with apologies, with excuses, with "I've been thinking about you." But by then, you'll be different. You won't be the same person who cried over unread messages and waited on someone's inconsistent love. You'll be wiser, stronger, and you'll look at that situation and say, I remember when I wanted this so badly, but now I see it for what it was. That's what happens when you stop chasing, you stop forcing, and you start flowing. And everything that's truly meant for you begins to find its way to you. Without begging, without struggle, without pain. Because peace follows clarity. And clarity comes the moment you stop chasing what isn't chasing you.